Hello everyone, and thanks for taking the time to review the Santa Clara County real estate market analysis for April 2008. My name is Robert Whitelaw, and I'm a California real estate broker, a member of the National Association of Realtors, and a certified ePro. Now let's go ahead, jump in, take a look at what we've got for the month of April 2008. First, what we're going to do is look at the sales numbers. The sales numbers in this case are represented by the blue bar, and as you can see, we've seen a steady decline since 2004 in these numbers. Still, the rate of decline has stayed steady, so we haven't seen a dramatic change, but we're still seeing a drop. In fact, if you compare the month of April to the same time last year, sales are down 26.6%. which gives us a grand total of 654 homes that were sold in Santa Clara County in April of 2008. Now, the new listings that were added to the market in April of 2008, and that represents the red bar, was up by 15.4%. So those are the folks that are entering the market trying to sell their home, which gave us a total of 2,227 homes that were added to the market. It would have been nice to actually see that number be a little lower. We normally see an uptick in the month of April in the number of homes that are listed. But as you can see, it's an increase from last year. It's an increase of 15.4%. In a market where we're seeing sales decline, and as you can see from the inventory numbers, inventory is increasing, it would actually be more comforting to see less people joining the market than have been in the month of April. Now, as I mentioned a moment ago, inventory is obviously way up. Again, this is another month where just a dramatic increase. You can see that there's been a steady increase from 2005 up to 2007, but then in 2008 we get a dramatic increase. And in fact, from 2007 to 2008, we saw a 54.1% increase in inventory. That's just huge, a major increase from last year, and that gives us a total of over 6,000 homes currently trying to get sold in Santa Clara County. That's 6,045 homes. Now, if we do the math real quickly here, we can see that when you compare the number of homes that have sold in the month versus the number of homes on the market, if everything stayed the same, if the numbers froze as they are right now, that would give us 9.2 months worth of inventory. And to translate that into a little bit more personal terms, for every home that sells, there are about 9 other homes on the market trying to get sold. Now, that, remember, these are countywide numbers. You'll see, and we've mentioned this before in other shows, it's really about the micro markets right now. So if you're someone who lives in Santa Clara County, these numbers are interesting to sort of get an idea of the overall averaged out performance of the market, but you really ought to find out what the numbers are for your specific area because they can vary widely. If you're a regular viewer, you know I do a show on Morgan Hill, I do a show on Los Gatos, I do a show on Cupertino. I'm going to be adding a show for Saratoga and also for Campbell, so you'll get some ideas here of how the variation spreads out across the county. But in areas like Cupertino, it's exactly the opposite of this. They're seeing completely different performance. And even within San Jose, we are seeing, which is a good chunk of Santa Clara County, even within cities like San Jose, we're seeing a lot of variability between communities there. So while using these as a general idea of how the market's doing, it can be helpful. You're really not going to get a firm idea until you really have someone come in and do a specific analysis of your area. Now, if we go ahead and move on to a more recent look. Now, remember, we were looking just at past years, the same month in past years on our last slide. On this slide, we're looking at starting in April, looking all the way back to January of 2007, just to sort of get an idea of what are the differences with the seasonal type things that are happening between last year and this year. You can see that we are seeing the typical increase in April that you see every April. From pretty much from January through April, May, and into June, we see increases in inventory numbers. This is if you look back, you can see that between April and March and April, we had more of a flat period as far as homes being added to the market, but still a general increase. This is the time of year when folks are putting their homes on the market for the perceived summer season. And you can also see that there's an increase in sales during the same period last year. This year, we're seeing a minor increase, but it's just at a lower level. It's all living. The sales are living at a lower level, and the inventory and added homes are all existing at a higher level. So the general theory of just where are we seeing increases and decreases, regardless of where they are, whether they're high numbers or low numbers to start with, is all fitting in with the normal seasonal types of changes we would expect, but just being in places we'd rather not have them be, like exceptionally high inventory, increased folks adding their homes to the market, and lower sales numbers. For just a month-to-month comparison, if we compare March to April, the number of homes that have sold is actually up 12.2%. Again, we should expect an increase from March to April. So that's normal. It's a pretty healthy increase. But we've seen better in past markets. The number of homes listed was up 8.6% from March to April, and the inventory overall change was up 9.5% from March to April. Now let's go ahead at the next most important thing to consider when we're talking about the market is home prices. Now, as we've talked about month and month, just as in plenty of months going back, Silicon Valley, Santa Clara County has managed to really avoid a lot of the down market we've seen in other parts of the country in only one way, and that was average home price. Now, that's what makes this particular market downturn different from other market downturns. We saw every other element that defines a market down in Santa Clara County. High inventory numbers, low sales, but the average home price was staying relatively high up until just within the last few months. We're finally seeing the average home price coming down when compared to the previous year. We're not quite down to the average price that we were seeing in 2006 at this time of year, but still we are substantially down. If you'll look at those numbers, you can see that the average sales price for a home was $986,194, down from just over $1.1 million last year at the same time. Now, the highest priced home, the home that sold for the highest amount of money, was in Shannon Road in Los Gatos. That sold for $7.7 million. The list price, the asking price, was $7.9. So when you take into consideration the price point we're at, a drop of $200,000 isn't that substantial. The big news here on this particular home is it sold in 8 days, which really breaks the average, which we'll discuss here in a few minutes. Now, we can talk a little bit more about this, but this sort of reinforces the idea that we've talked about in previous shows about how it's less about the more expensive properties selling and not selling, and more about just the best homes in each price bracket, are selling the best. So taking that general idea to apply to this specific property, we can say that if we were to go and view this home, and other folks who buy at that price range were viewing homes, this property, odds are, while it's sold at 7.7, probably when you looked at its competition as far as properties go, had far more to offer than other things at the same price range. So it's not that there aren't buyers at the various price points. It's simply that the buyers at those price points are naturally expecting to get the absolute best in that price range. So I think this is a good example of that. Because at the other end of the spectrum, here's a home, lowest priced home, also in the Los Gatos area. Actually, this one was a Los Gatos Mountains property on Canyon Vista. This home sold for $200,000 with a list price of $250,000, and that home took 176 days to sell. The interesting thing to note here is the one exception to this little rule we just discussed about how there being buyers at every price point is at the extreme low end. The homes at the extreme low end aren't tending to sell, because what you're finding is that the homes at the extremely low end really don't have a lot to offer, and folks who are willing to spend just a little bit more, say $350,000, $400,000, can get a whole lot more house for their money. So folks just aren't really gravitating to the bottom end. But once you get past that bottom end, homes at each price bracket are selling relatively well. Now, the change from last year, from 2007 to 2008, is 10.1%. So average home price is down 10.1% in Santa Clara County. Now, if we look at the same numbers as we do, looking back on previous months, we can see the general areas where these things are up and down based on seasonal changes. We can see that we hit the bottom here in December, but what's interesting is if we look at January of last year, and we see that the change, how things kind of ramped up, things increased in February, March, April, and May. They sort of topped out. Notice in June and July, we saw a drop in average price and then a quick increase in August with a little bit more of a flattening from August until November. What we're concerned about here is we just aren't seeing in compared to the surrounding months, the sort of increase we would expect between March and April. Look at the increase we got between March and April of last year as the season ramped up. Now, we are in the season now. It'll be interesting to see how much more change we see between April and May, but my suspicion is it's going to look relatively flat, simply because it's so flat now when we compare it to March. Now, if that's the case, I think we're finally hitting that place where the market is really flattening in all aspects, as far as sales price is concerned, and it wouldn't surprise me if we start to see the number of homes that are selling flatten. I'm not ready to say the same thing about the number of homes that get listed and the number of homes that are on the total inventory, but we're really at a pivotal point here. April has been an interesting month. I said it would be last month, and it has been, because we just haven't seen the average sales price increase that we would normally expect to see when compared to the same time last year. Okay. We actually only saw a 0.2% change from March to April, and we would have expected to see a little bit more of a change. Now, let's go ahead and look at days on the market. This is probably the next most important number. Once you've decided how much you'd like to get for a property or sell your home for, it's nice to know how long it'll take you to get it. And right now, it's taking 74 days to get a home sold. That's a 57.4% increase from the same time last year. And as you can see, just like everything else, as linked with inventory and the number of homes listed numbers, we've just seen this number increasing pretty regularly since 2005. We'll see how this goes in the coming months. I'd like to see this also flatten out to probably, when it does flatten out, it'll be right around this level. But in general, I think that we're seeing more of a flattening trend. This is, again, a number that has increased by a greater amount than in previous years. If you'll notice, it's sort of, again, a steady climb from 2005 to 2007, and then a really big jump here. It might be suddenly people are just, the whole situation has finally come to a head, so things are just a little bit more dramatic this year for the county in realizing the kind of market everyone is facing. Now, let's go ahead and look at days on market over past months. And again, you get the seasonal influences here, where we had a big increase in the winter months. So we saw things go really high in December, January. That's very normal. Again, we would expect to see things drop as we entered into the new year and came out of the winter time. What's interesting to note is look at April of last year and then look at the areas around it. Last year, we saw a much bigger drop in the days on market from March to April than we did this year. We only got a 2-day drop. And last year, we got nearly a week and a half taken off of the total time it was taking to get a home sold. So just not as much of a market reaction. When we see the market in its time when it's supposed to be heating up, it's just not generating the kind of heat we would expect. We'll see how that plays out in the coming months to see what sort of an effect that has. So what does this tell everybody? I think the general idea to take from this is that this downturn isn't over. We haven't seen the bottom of it. In last month's show, I talked a little bit more about where we might see things in a year. I had some great conversations with some folks who watched the show relating to my assertions on that. With recent things that have been coming out in the news relating to local economics and unemployment numbers and growth numbers and those sorts of things, it's hard to make any conclusions because often this is the time of year when those things are expected to happen. It's really sort of hold your breath and let's see what happens as we enter further into the summer months and see how things go. Now, I appreciate y'all taking the time to come and listen to what I have to say on these topics. If you have any questions, ideas, or suggestions, I'd be happy to hear from you. You can email me at robert@soldbyrobert.com. Or if you'd like to go to my website and look at any of my other articles, podcasts, or video presentations, you can find those at www.soldbyrobert.com. You can also call me directly if you like with anything you'd like to talk about relating to real estate. I'm happy to do that. My phone number is 408-852-0525. And if you really want to go crazy, you can also find me on Facebook as the Rebel Broker. And you can also find, and I think you'll also find me if you just search on my name. And you can also find the rest of my video presentations on YouTube. Thanks again, and I look forward to talking to you all next month.